Welcome to the 3-Down Breakdown, CFL style. Are you ready for some football? Canadian football? I am. Week 1 of the season is upon us. We've got lines. We've got lines. Remember that old AOL tagline? You've got mail. We've got lines. CFL Week 1. I'm excited. You can tell the enthusiasm, the excitement, the regular season about to kick off this Thursday night. June the 22nd. Looking forward to it for sure. We've got 4 games on the docket to kick off week 1. 1 game each night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they've spread out the week 1 schedule. Looking forward to seeing how each of these teams kicks off the new season. Andrew McInnis, my co-host, is here with me all season long, and he is with me now as well. Andrew, how are you? Ready for week 1? His mic is muted here, it looks like. So let me just point that out to him. Yeah, week 1, we're looking forward to it. There's no question about that. We're going to get right down to business. We've got half an hour before Jeff and Donnie take over with the right side of campus. So that is definitely something that you want to be aware of, to stay tuned after our show. We're going to begin with Thursday's game to kick off the season. Thursday, June 22nd, Saskatchewan Roughriders taking on the Montreal Alouettes. On Thursday night, June 22nd, we have Montreal currently priced as a 6.5-point home favorite in this game. Total sitting at about 50-50.5. We do have a 51 out there currently at the Greek as things stand right now. I'll be honest, before preseason, before training camp, you always have your preseason indications, which teams you think are going to be better, which teams you think might regress a little bit, which teams may stay around the same, and which teams you're just not sure about going into the new season. Really, every team in the league can fit any of those categories going into a new season. But for me, when it came to the Saskatchewan Roughriders going into training camp, I was optimistic. Chris Jones now, year 2 as head coach and GM. They've made a lot of changes to the personnel, a lot of enhancements they were hoping on both sides of the football. You're just wondering to see how quickly it would come together. Obviously, it's a changing of the guard in Saskatchewan. The big offseason news was Darian Durant being traded to Montreal. He had been the franchise quarterback with the Rough Riders for a decade or close to it. I mean, it's going to be hard to imagine watching Saskatchewan games this year without Darian Durant on the field. And Kevin Glenn taking over as the number 1 quarterback. And I was somewhat optimistic going into the season here with this Saskatchewan Roughriders team, but then I started to see this team play in the preseason, and I'm saying this right now, I didn't like what I saw, not one little bit, from the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I mean, if anyone saw the Saskatchewan BC preseason game, their second preseason game it was a whole lot of ugly for this Saskatchewan team. Offensively, they couldn't move the ball. The offensive line was not protecting well for any of the quarterbacks that were in that game. And the defense on the other side, they showed they had plenty of holes in it. Too much time for Jonathan Jennings, that is, the BC quarterback, to get the ball downfield. Didn't do a good enough job covering receivers downfield. Didn't do a good enough job stopping the run. There's some concerns here with Saskatchewan. The thing is, though, it's preseason. We say it in the NFL. We're going to say it in the CFL, too. Don't want to overreact to it, but you do want to at least take what you've seen in the preseason with a little bit of a grain of salt and see if it carries over into the regular season. That gives me pause for concern here with this Saskatchewan team heading into this game. Montreal, there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of expectations that this team will be improved this season. The Alouettes, obviously, Darian Durant, they get a bona fide number 1 quarterback in there. A quarterback, though, that's got injury concerns. He has suffered a significant, severe, and almost career-threatening injury that has ended his season each of the last 2 years, talking about Darian Durant. That's a concern. I mean, this is a guy that could be one more hit away from having no more pro football career. That really is how scary things are right now with Durant in terms of his health situation. They're hoping that a healthy Terrell Sutton in the backfield is going to help this team. My concern is he's had injuries. He's now 30 years old. Durability is going to be a question mark for him. You know, the receiving core, BJ Cunningham's going to have a big year. You know, Nick Lewis is still, a Hall of Fame career for sure. He is definitely going to the CFL Hall of Fame when his career ends. He is back again. big weapon for Montreal over the middle of the field for Darian Durant. You're already seeing them in the preseason get some of that chemistry going. The defense is going to be good again. They didn't have problems in terms of stopping other teams last year. It was putting points on the board. That was the big issue for the Alouettes. John Bowman's back, Gabe Napton's back, Chip Cox, the mainstays in this Alouette defense for the last few years, all back on this football team. So this is going to be a pretty good defensive unit once again. It's going to be a question of how good that offense is and how healthy Darian Durant stays. This is probably the game on the CFL card this week that I have the least amount of opinion on right now. I was interested in Saskatchewan. I thought they were going to be a bet-on team right out of the gate, but their preseason and their training camp and the issues that they've got floating around them, cutting a bunch of players, bringing in new players this week, a lot of them. There's still a lot of shuffling going on. I'm not sure that's a situation that I want to put money on going into the new season here right away in week 1. So I was leaning Saskatchewan initially, but odds makers actually, believe it or not, surprisingly to me, they're onto it a little bit that Saskatchewan, didn't have a great preseason, didn't have a great training camp. Installing Montreal as a 6.5-point home favorite. That does seem a little bit rich to me. Montreal was not a good point spread team at home last year, not even close. They were a disaster, really, in terms of covering numbers. ATS at Percival Molson Stadium in Montreal. They're going to have to show me they can win by a touchdown or more before I get involved. Not much of an opinion here. Andrew is back with us here. He's had some issues, a couple glitches here, but he's back. He's ready to talk about Saskatchewan, Montreal. What's his thoughts on Riders Owls Thursday night?
Yeah, here's one thing I have to say about this Owls team, Ian. I just think that this matchup of the week is the most matchup that we cannot predict. I mean, this is one thing that I'm certainly and most certainly taking a pass on. I mean, this is 100% that I'm just gonna. If anything, if I was to make any play on this, Ian, for everyone out there watching, I would look at the under. These are two teams that are trying to figure each other out. I think they both have, some offenses that could do damage, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of question marks, Ian. There's going to be a lot of people wondering what these teams are going to do. I mean, like you mentioned, when I popped back in here, I heard you talking about the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and we're all wondering what this team can do. I mean, they're the biggest question mark, I think, in the CFL this year. So I'm looking forward to just sitting back, watching as a fan. But if I was to bet that game, I have a slight lean on the under, strictly because I just don't really think these teams have the chemistry right now, and they're really going to have everything together. And, for that reason, I think that even though with the firepower, with Darian Durant at QB, with the offensive weapons that Saskatchewan Roughriders have acquired over the summer, I still think there's just too much to question with these two teams. And it's probably not going to be the most entertaining game of the week in my eyes.
That's probably something we can definitely agree upon. Not exactly the sexiest matchup, I guess you could say, here in week 1 of the CFL season. I should point out the format of the show. Starting next week, we're going to do like a little 4 or 5 minute headline segment to begin each 3-down breakdown show, where we talk about past week's action briefly, any key injuries that came out of the previous week of action. That will begin that segment at the beginning of every 3-down breakdown show next week. Prior to our week 2 preview, we'll just a brief recap of week 1 action, any key injuries, mention how it might impact these teams going forward. Just something like that before we break down week 2 games. That segment will start next week at the top of the show. Let's move on to Friday's game, June 23rd. This one definitely is going to be one that could be one of the better matchups in week 1. A Grey Cup rematch between the Calgary Stampeders and Ottawa Red Blacks. Calgary opened a 2.5-point road favorite in this game. It's about 3 now pretty much across the board. So a slight trickle of money on the Stampeders as now a 3-point road favorite in Ottawa, total 54.5, 55 in most locations, bouncing around that range. And I'll tell you what, these two teams put on a show for us in the Grey Cup game last year. It was a fantastic Grey Cup championship game. Ottawa raced out to an early lead. Calgary battled back, made it interesting, ended up going to OT. It was just an absolutely phenomenal Grey Cup game last year, and the Ottawa Red Blacks end up pulling it out 39-33. Just a fantastic performance by Ottawa, and Grey Cup revenge certainly is going to be on the minds here of the Calgary Stampeders here, no doubt about it, in this week 1 matchup. And Calgary's always been a fast starter. I mean, this has been a Calgary team that you go back years and years, even back to when John Huffnagel coached this team, always a quick starting football team. They didn't usually slump out of the gate, and that's definitely going to be something that you're going to want to watch for here in this game against Ottawa. I'll tell you what, with this Ottawa team, everybody wondering, is Trevor Harris ready to be a number one quarterback in this league? Every time he played for an injured Ricky Ray in Toronto, every time he played for Henry Burris last year when he got injured, he played well. He made the throws. He was calm, poised in the pocket. Did he make the odd mistake or two? Of course, any quarterback will. But he showed a lot of poise, a lot of accuracy with the football, good decision-making more than not. And Trevor Harris is a guy that I definitely have some high hopes for. And I think unless the pressure of being a number one gets to him, I think he does have the talent and the ability to thrive at the quarterback spot. I know they lose Ernest Jackson, Chris Williams in the receiving core, but it's still a very, very loaded receiving core, especially when you see a guy like Jaron Kreiner really step up, play awesome in the preseason. That's big time for Ottawa to help out Greg Ellingson, to help out Brad Sinopoli, to have Jaron Kreiner really shine in the preseason, show himself as a legitimate third option in that receiving core. Tells me that receiving core is still in pretty good shape. I know they're going to miss the two veterans, Jackson and Williams, but not the be-all, end-all. Offensively, they look like they're in great shape still. I like the running. They're very deep at running back. There's no question about that. Defense is the issue, though. Defense does have some concerns. They lose their best cover corner in Abdul Kanay, who signed it with Hamilton as a free agent. Got some shuffling back there. The defensive line, even some changes up front as well. It's just a question of how good is that defense going to be early on in the season. This is going to be my best bet game for the end of the video, so I'm going to save the opinion for that toward the end. But definitely when I look at this game, Calgary and Ottawa, it's a fascinating game. You should see points. I think both offenses should be good. Some concern about Calgary's offensive line going into the season. They did battle some injuries in training camp, but it looks like they're starting to get some of those guys healthy just in time for week one of the regular season. That's a good sign. It should be an entertaining football game, although I do believe there's a chance of rain in Ottawa Friday night. So, again, weather. Definitely something now. We're talking at football, especially these outdoor games, unless the game, taking place at BC Place Stadium, you're going to need to be aware of the weather forecast here, especially later in the season when it gets cold, it gets windy, you get those late regular season playoff games in October and November. Weather you're going to need to pay attention to. But fascinating game. This is best bet game for the end of the video, so we'll wait for that. Andrew, what's your take? Calgary, Ottawa, Friday night.
Yeah, I'm ready for this game. I'm pretty fired up. This is going to be clearly one of the best games of the week for sure. I don't like to get too wrapped up in the media and all that stuff and what they're saying, but seeing an interview with Bo Levi Mitchell and Trevor Harris, and they're definitely fired up, and this means something to them. I mean, any sports fan can't say it doesn't. It's the same thing in the NHL and the NBA, like with Christmas time when the Cleveland Cavaliers play the Golden State Warriors. I mean, it means something. They get an opportunity to play each other in week one. And I think one thing that you pointed out about the Ottawa Red Blacks is the defense. I mean, they're going to be so reliant, Ian, in my opinion, about how many points they can put up each and every week. I'm not saying they're going to come out and shit the bed every single week on defense, but I think, in my opinion, this Ottawa Red Blacks team is going to have to put up at least 25 or 30 points or more every single night and able to give their team a chance to win. And I think Trevor Harris has that in him. Like you mentioned, Ricky Ray, the injuries he had, Trevor Harris steps in. Henry Burris goes down, or they're up by a good amount. Trevor Harris comes in, continues the slaughter. I mean, I think he's a great QB. He's going to settle in as his own, and this team is his now. I'm a big fan of this, and this is actually one of my top-rated games as well this week. I see a lot of good action in this game, and over on the Calgary side, I think the Calgary, I think they're a lot more well-rounded of a team this year. They have a lot more depth. I think last year, they were a lot more self-reliant on Bo Levi Mitchell to kind of just make the plays for them. I think that their depth along the wide receiver core is going to help them a lot more now, give them a lot more options. Like I said, I think this game's going to have quite a few points. It's going to lack quite a bit of defense, but it's going to be that team, I think, in the third quarter, coming out of the second half, that really gets those key stops, that prevents Trevor Harris from making the magic plays that he does, that prevents Bo Levi Mitchell from throwing that 40-yard, 50-yard bomb down the field. And, again, this is going to be one of my plays that I'll talk about later on in the video too, I believe. But, again, this is going to be probably one of the most entertaining games of the week. And the team with the most defensive plays or even sacks, I think, is going to take care of this win.
It's going to be all about timely stops. It's all going to be about red zone defense. It's going to be about forcing teams to field goals instead of letting them score touchdowns. That's what you get when you get games where you've got two great offenses. And it's like that in the NFL, and it's like that in college football. It's not so much just keeping the team off the board. The two offenses are too good now in modern day pro and college football to keep them completely shut down. They're just too good, and a lot of them, and they're too efficient. A lot of them run tempo offense, especially in the college and NFL ranks. It's all about when you make your stops on defense and how often you're able to be efficient in the red zone in terms of holding teams to a field goal instead of a touchdown. Those little plays on defense, that's the difference between winning and losing, and oftentimes the difference between covering a point spread and not covering a point spread. And that's probably going to be the case here with this game. Saturday's game should be interesting. Edmonton Eskimos, BC Lions coming up. We've got BC 3-point home favorite. This is the highest total of the week on the CFL Week 1 board. 58 for a total between the Eskimos and Lions across the board. And I think part of that is because we've seen it. Now, this is now the second year of Jason Moss as the head coach of the Edmonton Eskimos. And in year one, this is the one team in the CFL, the Edmonton Eskimos, that made a point of it to run a little bit of an up-tempo, no-huddle, hurry-up offense. We saw it last year in terms of the play clock, which is 20 seconds in the CFL. They didn't use much of it. I mean, you were seeing them, snapping the ball with about 8 or 10 seconds left on the play clock routinely. So they played with not a blazing fast tempo, for sure, not like anything like Oregon would do in college football or a Western Kentucky or, teams like that in the college ranks. They don't run that fast a tempo on offense, but they did run a little bit faster on average in terms of seconds per snap than other teams did in the CFL. And that's probably a bit of the reason why this total's 58. Another reason is probably, Edmonton's defense has question marks. That was a defense that dropped off last year, even though they had some good pass rushers up front, and Almondo Sewell and Odell Willis. It was hard to believe this team struggled as much as they did. Of course, J.C. Sherritt, too, very good linebacker for that team. But again, defense was an issue for them. Offensively, they should be fine again. I mean, Mike Riley, a very good quarterback. He's getting a little older now. I mean, he's now in his 30s. You do get concerned with that. Injuries. Can he avoid those this season? The thing that's going to concern me for Edmonton a little bit offensively, there is one concern. This offense is still going to be pretty good. You lose Darrell Walker, who's now in the NFL. Darrell Walker was a big, deep threat, big-time explosive player down the field in terms of catching the football. He no longer with this Edmonton team, and Walker's departure really means Darius Bowman is going to get a lot of the attention defensively from opposing teams. And Shamad Chambers has been brought in, spent last season with Saskatchewan to try to give Edmonton another deep threat and, give Darius Bowman some help down the field. I'll tell you what, right now, Shamad Chambers ain't no Darrell Walker, not even maybe. Not a chance. Shamad Chambers is inconsistent. He's had problems with drops in the past. He has had injury problems in the past as well. This is just a, let's roll the dice here decision, an option by Edmonton, and say, let's hope that Chambers can get us at least half the production and efficiency that Darrell Walker did at that receiving position. I don't think he will. I think it is a drop-off. Shamad Chambers in that position instead of Darrell Walker. No question about that. So there is concerns now a little bit. That Edmonton receiving core, not as strong, not as deep anymore without Darrell Walker. Still, they've got a good offensive line. Question marks, much like with the Ottawa Red Blacks, Andrew. It's going to be, where do the stops come from? Are they able to improve on that side of the ball? BC, on the other hand, they're loaded for bear. This defense looks fantastic, especially up front. They've got not one, not two, but three premier pass rushers that can get pressure on opposing quarterbacks. That's big. Really, the defensive line and being able to pressure quarterbacks in a pass-happy league like the CFL is paramount. BC can do that. And the secondary is a little bit in flux for BC. That's the one weak area of this team, but that's their only weak area. And, Wally Buono is probably going to get that unit right. Mark Washington, too, is a great defensive coordinator, has been for years in BC as well. And Jonathan Jennings, year 2 now as a starting quarterback. I think this is a breakout year for him. He had a great season last year. Actually, you could say last year was a breakout season for him, getting to the West Final. Gaudy numbers, but the one number that wasn't so gaudy for Jonathan Jennings last year was 15 interceptions. He's going to want to cut down on that. I think he will, with more experience under his belt now. And be a much better quarterback as a result here. So Eskimos Lions should be a fantastic game. Andrew, what do you think about this Saturday night West Division tilt?
Man, Ian, you took those words right out of my mouth, man. I think this is going to be a breakout year for Jonathan Jennings. I heard you really talk the BC Lions up when we went over our futures bet show. I know you like the BC Lions. I know you like the BC Lions defense, but I'm just a big fan of Jonathan Jennings right now. I think he's kind of like that uh, versatile player or quarterback that every team really needs. He can scramble out of the pocket. He can make a pass on the run, and he's that player that really any team would want, because as good of a defense that this BC Lions team has, Ian, they need to have someone that can step on the field and actually throw a bomb or make a quick pass to the slot. And that's what he does. I mean, he puts confidence in his team. I'm sure his defense has no problem getting him stops, because when he gets out there, I mean, they're going to put up points. I mean, I know it was just an exhibition game, but I believe they put up 40 points in the week 2 preseason. And that's just preseason, but it just goes to show really what they're going to do in the regular season. I think this is going to be a big game for him. The line was sitting at -2.5 or -3 now, at -110 or -115. I'm all over the BC Lions this week. I think that they're being kind of just way too undervalued. I think the Edmonton Eskimos are going to be a team that's going to surprise a lot of people. They're going to put up a little bit of a fight. But this BC Lions is just way too much, Ian, in my opinion. Like you mentioned, you talk about the pass rushers they have. I think that that's going to be a big factor. Mike Riley, he's old. Like you said, I mean, you talked about it with Ricky Ray. Age is a factor. Nobody can hide what age does to people, no matter how good you are. Especially in the CFL, how it's such a passing game. I mean, there's a lot more passing than there is running in the CFL. And with this BC Lions defense, the field position that they're going to give their team on offense, it's going to be a slaughter fest, in my opinion. I mean, I think Edmonton won't get blown out, but I think BC Lions are going to put up a performance that'll shock a lot of people.
All right, Hamilton, Toronto, Sunday, the wrap-up for week 1 of the regular season. We've got the Ticats, a 3.5, 4-point road favorite, total of 53 to 54, actually mostly 54, pretty much across the board, 4 p.m. Eastern. I should point out, I believe Saskatchewan, Montreal on Thursday is not televised, but Calgary, Ottawa is on ESPN News in the United States on Friday night. Edmonton, BC on Saturday night is ESPN 2. So that's big time. ESPN2 for that Edmonton, BC game in the States on Saturday night. And I believe this is also an ESPN2 game. Hamilton, Toronto on Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern. A battle of, I can't say Battle of Ontario anymore. You got Ottawa in the league now again, but Battle of the QEW, I guess you could call it. Hamilton and Toronto. Great rivalry, but it's been a one-sided rivalry. I mean, the Ticats have basically kicked the snot out of the Argos now repeatedly over the years. Rebuilding season for the Toronto Argonauts. Jim Pop, Mark Trestman in there. Ricky Ray, the quarterback, who can still play pretty well, but can he stay healthy again? We've talked about it ad nauseum. That's been an issue. I mean, you look at the dominance that Hamilton has displayed against Toronto. It really is something. Hamilton's just done a fantastic job. 6-1 straight up and against the spread the last 7 meetings against Toronto head-to-head. They've dominated. Zach Collaros healthy. They're going to need him to stay healthy to have that offense click at the level they hoped for. I'll tell you, watch out for Brian Timms for this Hamilton receiving core. He had a great preseason. He's going to be a fantasy sleeper. He's not going to be a guy commanding as much of a price as some of these other receivers from a fantasy CFL perspective. Brian Timms for Hamilton, guy that's going to have some value in my opinion. You know what? There was great energy and spirit in the Toronto preseason and training camp. They played with great energy, great effort. Positive signs already. They got people, they've got the players' attention. This could be a team that, as the season progresses, could cash tickets once they get some experience under their belt. I have no clue how they're going to play here in week 1, to be honest with you. I don't trust them. I know they're a home underdog here, catching more than a field goal. That's usually appealing to me. Not in this case. I want to sit back, see how the Argos do, this very young roster here in their very first regular season game. Should be an interesting game. I'll lean a little bit to the Cats. Andrew, we don't have much time. What do you think quickly on this game?
Yeah, I just think this Argos team is kind of like this Philadelphia 76ers team in the NBA right now. They're in that building mode, Ian. They're not going to be shit all season, but they're just not a team that you're looking at to back. Unless they get some crazy lines thrown at them. I'm all over the Hamilton Tiger Cats this week. I think looking at Zach Collaros and the injuries that he's gone through and how hard he's worked to get back, I think this is his week, Ian. I'm a big fan of them, and I think -3.5 of a spread is just way too small not to love the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah, certainly. Again, Toronto, I think they're going to struggle early. I mean, I don't think you can just bring a new GM, a new coach, new systems on both sides of the ball, new players on both sides of the football, pretty much everywhere. A young receiving core. I mean, Brian Jones and Devin Wiley, other than S.J. Green, the veteran that they brought in from Montreal, that's a very, very young Toronto Argonaut receiving core this year. That's going to take time. The defense is completely rebuilt from last season. New faces everywhere. They're going to take time. I can't trust it in week one. Maybe in time they're competitive. They're able to win and compete in some games. I don't know if it's going to be right away. So at this point, even though you got to lay more than a field goal on the road, that's never something I love doing. My lean-to would be to the Ticats in that one as well in week one. Maybe you get some points as well. We'll see what the weather's like, but maybe that game can find its way over the total. We'll see. Just early leans, though, here on a Tuesday. All right. Here's two games that two opinions coming up to end the show that aren't leans. These are our best bets coming up for week one of the CFL season, our very first best bets of the season. I'm going to Calgary, Ottawa. Let's see what the current number is right now, or the best available number is right now. I'm going to use the Pinnacle number because it's the one that I'm seeing that's actually still 2.5. I'm going to lay 2.5 with Calgary, minus 118 in this game. Grey Cup revenge situation. Again, the Stampeders had no problems winning on the road. And how about the fact that Calgary 13-5 against the spread last year? Tremendous spread record. You're not supposed to be able to make money with the best team in the league. In NFL, CFL, college, whatever. They're supposed to be priced expensively. And yet Calgary, despite that tremendous regular season last year, still had a 13-5 against the spread record last year. Still made a lot of money back in the Stampeders. I think you'll be able to make some money back in the Stampeders in week one on Friday night. I'll take Calgary minus 2.5, rotation number 353. It's my best bet for week one. Andrew, what's yours?
For my best bet of the week, I'm going to go with the last game we just talked about, the Hamilton Tiger Cats minus 3.5. I think it's a great spot for them. I think they're going to be on a mission this year. I think Zach Collaros is going to be hungry. And, this line, again, like I said, is just too small. The Argos are just on a build right now. They're not going to be prepared. They're not going to be ready coming to this game. This is going to be a game where the Tiger Cats win by, I think, more than a touchdown.
All right, very good. There you go. Hamilton for minus 3.5 for Andrew. Calgary minus 2.5 for me. Your best bets for CFL week one. And again, when it comes to Calgary, Ottawa, Calgary a little bit more fluid on defense to begin the season than Ottawa. That could make all the difference in the end. That'll wrap up our 3-down breakdown show previewing week one. We're back next Tuesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time with another edition of the 3-down breakdown. Coming right up, it's Jeff Nadu, the big man, and Donnie right side of campus. So stay tuned to SBR videos. Until next week, enjoy week one of CFL action and good luck.